Have you ever vanished from the lives of those around you, if only for a moment, and noticed the ripples you leave behind? The silence you create speaks louder than any words ever could. To disappear is not merely to walk away, it is to give others a mirror, a moment of truth, a chance to feel what your presence truly meant. And in that space, something remarkable happens. They feel, they reflect, they realize, and in those realizations, life begins to change. They feel the void. The absence is palpable. It's in the empty chair, the unread message, the unanswered call. When you vanish, the world takes a breath. It didn't know it was holding, and suddenly, your absence becomes louder than any presence ever was. People begin to sense just how much energy, love, or light you brought into their lives, even if it was subtle, even if it went unnoticed before. They feel uncertainty. Without your consistency, doubts creep in. Questions arise like shadows in the dark. Did I do something wrong? Was I too much or not enough? Your disappearance forces them to confront the fragility of connections, and in that discomfort, growth is born. For it is in uncertainty that we learn to value what we cannot take for granted. The people feel longing. A quiet ache settles in the corners of their hearts. It's not just missing someone, it's the craving for the warmth, the wisdom, the laughter you carried with you. Absence is the whisper of desire, a reminder that what they once had cannot be replicated easily. They begin to treasure what was once ordinary, now suddenly extraordinary. They feel self-reflection. Your leaving becomes a mirror, a moment of introspection. They start asking themselves who they are without you. How have they contributed to their own emptiness? What lessons did your presence teach them? Your disappearance awakens a quiet confrontation with their own choices, their own values, their own path. 5. They feel appreciation. The value of your presence becomes undeniable. Each thought, each memory, each shared smile becomes a treasure they might have overlooked before. They realize that sometimes it takes losing something even temporarily to truly understand its worth. Appreciation grows in the soil of absence. 6. They feel regret. Mistakes, harsh words, unspoken apologies, they surface like tides in the night. Absence highlights what they might have taken for granted. Regret is not meant to imprison them, but to awaken a deeper awareness, a chance to act with kindness and intention moving forward. They feel change. Your absence is a catalyst. They may adjust, adapt, and transform in ways they never imagined. Life has a way of pushing people to grow, even through the discomfort of missing you. Your disappearance is not just a gap. It is a spark that ignites evolution, a reminder that growth often comes from emptiness. 8. They feel strength. Even in your absence, they discover resilience. They realize they can survive, adapt, and thrive without what they once depended on. And in that strength, a quiet empowerment emerges. They become more capable, more self-reliant, more aware of their own inner power. 9. They feel connection in memory. Distance, silence, absence. None of these can erase the impact you've made. Memories linger, moments replay, and emotions remain. Even when unseen, your influence continues to guide, teach, and inspire. They begin to treasure not just your presence, but the legacy of your presence. 10. They feel the call to action. Finally, your disappearance awakens a call, a push to reach out, to make amends, to pursue what truly matters. They realize that life is fleeting, that connections are precious, and that time waits for no one. Your absence ignites action, reflection, and transformation. So if you feel invisible, if you fear leaving a mark, know this: every choice, every step, every silence carries weight. Disappear, not to escape, but to awaken. Leave not out of anger or fear, but to illuminate what has been hidden in plain sight. And when you return, or even when you stay, let your presence be intentional, your actions purposeful, and your love unwavering. Live in such a way that even your absence leaves a lesson, a spark, and a legacy. There is a peculiar power in stepping away, in allowing the world to breathe without you. It is often only in absence that the significance of your presence becomes undeniable. People move through life distracted, busy and preoccupied, seldom pausing to notice the quiet impact of another's existence. They don't see the little acts of kindness that thread themselves into their days, the unwavering support that steadies them in moments of doubt, the laughter that brings light into the heaviest of hours. But when you disappear, even for a moment, that unnoticed presence becomes glaringly apparent. The empty chair at the table, the silence on the phone, the absence of familiar warmth, it all strikes like a sudden gust of wind through the heart. It is in this silence that people begin to realize the depth of what was always there, the weight of what they took for granted. Your absence doesn't erase the impact you've made. It magnifies it. Every word you've spoken, every smile you've offered, every act of care becomes illuminated by the void you leave behind. It is as if the world suddenly turns the lights on, revealing the outlines of the space you occupied, the irreplaceable role you played in the rhythm of life around you. People begin to recognize not just your actions, but the essence of who you are. The energy you bring, the presence that feels like home. And with that recognition comes a mix of emotions: longing, appreciation, regret, and awakening. They start to see that your presence was not merely a background comfort, but a cornerstone, an invisible force that shaped moments, influenced decisions, and lifted spirits in ways that were quiet but profoundly real. There is a lesson hidden in this revelation, a truth that often only absence can teach. That value is not always measured by what is shouted from the rooftops, by grand gestures or public accolades, but by the steady, consistent influence one has on the lives they touch. And yet it is so easy for people to forget this while the presence remains constant, to take for granted the ones who never demand attention, the ones who quietly give without expectation, the ones who fill spaces with unspoken support and unwavering care. Disappearing, stepping back, creating a gap, it does not diminish you. It simply allows others the clarity to see what has always been there. They begin to understand the depth of your impact, the magnitude of your existence in ways that words alone could never convey. The laughter you brought becomes echoing in memory. The guidance you offered grows sharper in hindsight. The warmth you provided becomes a standard they now long for. Absence illuminates. Absence magnifies. Absence teaches a truth that presence sometimes cannot. It is the quiet reminder that what we contribute to the lives of others is rarely fully recognized in the moment, and that the moments of noticing often come only when the space is left behind. There is a raw honesty in this process, a confrontation with reality that is both humbling and awakening. They see the cracks that appear when you are gone, the hollowness where your influence once stood, and in that realization, the value of what you brought into their lives crystallizes. Every subtle smile, every gentle word, every silent support becomes vivid. Every unnoticed effort, every quiet act of love, every instance of simply being there becomes unforgettable. The presence that was once ordinary is transformed into extraordinary significance. People start to recognize that value is not something always spoken or celebrated. It is something lived, something felt, something experienced in the spaces we occupy and sometimes in the spaces we leave behind. There is a quiet power in silence, a force that commands attention in ways that words never can. When you disappear, when your presence is withdrawn, the stillness that follows becomes a mirror for those left behind. In the absence of your voice, your laughter, your counsel, people are forced to pause, to reckon with the space you once occupied. They begin to notice the cadence of their own lives, the patterns they move through, and the moments they may have overlooked, while being consumed by the noise of everyday existence. Silence is a teacher, and it has a way of speaking in a language that is unmistakable. It demands introspection. Without the distractions of your presence, without the comfort of your constant proximity, the mind starts to wander inward, to question, to examine, to evaluate. They ask themselves the questions they never asked before, questions about who they are, what they value, how they treat others, and how often they fail to recognize the blessings that surround them. There is a subtle awakening that occurs in these moments, a stirring of consciousness that is both unsettling and illuminating. People are forced to confront their own behavior, their own choices, and the ways in which they may have taken your presence for granted. They reflect on the moments when they should have listened more attentively, when they should have expressed gratitude, when they should have acted with patience and understanding. The silence magnifies the spaces where connection was lacking, the gaps that were left unattended, and the times when words were left unsaid. And in this reflection, a certain clarity emerges, a recognition of what truly matters, and what has been ignored or dismissed. It is in the absence of your constant presence that people realize the depth of your influence, the subtle yet profound ways in which you shaped their days, supported their journeys, and inspired their growth. Reflection is not passive, it is active, a turning inward that forces a confrontation with reality. They begin to see the patterns in their own lives, the habits that serve them, and the habits that hinder them. They begin to recognize the impact of their actions or inactions on the world around them, on the relationships they hold dear, and on the potential they may be squandering. In that quiet space left by your departure, they confront truths that they may have avoided while you were present, truths that are uncomfortable but necessary. They feel the weight of their own decisions, the consequences of their priorities, and the urgency to align their lives with their values. Reflection provoked by absence is transformative because it strips away the distractions, the noise, the endless busyness that often blinds people to their own shortcomings and to the significance of others. It forces a pause, a reckoning, and an awareness that is rarely achieved in the chaos of constant interaction. And as they sit in that silence, as they feel the void where you once were, they begin to see the patterns, the truths, and the lessons embedded in everyday life that were always present, but now illuminated by your withdrawal. They see themselves more clearly, their choices more starkly, and the consequences of their actions more vividly. This reflection ignites growth, it sparks understanding, and it creates a fertile ground for change. People begin to grasp the importance of gratitude, the urgency of presence, and the value of intention in their interactions. They understand that life is fleeting, that moments are precious, and that relationships require care and mindfulness. And within that reflective silence, there lies an opportunity, a quiet but undeniable chance for transformation, for realignment, and for the conscious decision to live more intentionally. There is a unique and powerful feeling that emerges when someone is no longer present. A sensation that creeps quietly into the corners of the heart and lingers long after the moment has passed. It is the feeling of longing, subtle at first, almost unnoticeable, like a shadow stretching across a sunlit room, but growing steadily until it cannot be ignored. Longing is not merely missing someone. It is an awakening of the soul to the depth of connection, the richness of shared experiences, and the weight of presence that once seemed ordinary. When you disappear, even temporarily, the world around those who remain feels a little emptier, a little quieter, a little less vibrant. The laughter that once flowed easily becomes a memory they replay, savoring each note, each nuance, each fleeting expression of joy that your presence once brought. Every moment spent together, every conversation, every glance, every silent understanding suddenly takes on new significance. People begin to notice the ways in which they leaned on you without realizing it, how your presence filled spaces in their lives they did not even know were empty, and how your energy shaped the rhythm of their days. Longing awakens appreciation because absence acts as a lens, bringing into focus what was always there but overlooked, what was once commonplace but is now extraordinary. In your absence, the small gestures, the gentle encouragement, the reassuring words, the shared laughter, the mere comfort of being near, become treasured memory. The mind wanders back to moments that were once taken for granted, replaying them with an intensity that brings both warmth and ache. People begin to recognize that the value of presence is not measured by grand displays or dramatic statements, but by the subtle, consistent acts of being, by the quiet support, the unseen effort, the silent understanding that weaves itself into the fabric of everyday life. Longing teaches them that connection is fragile, that life is fleeting, and that the ordinary moments we share are in truth extraordinary treasure. It ignites a new awareness, a conscious acknowledgement of what they have received without even realizing it, and a desire to hold more dearly the people who occupy their lives. When absence creates longing, it is a reminder that appreciation cannot always be forced. It cannot always be instructed. It must be experienced. And there is a bittersweet beauty in this process, because longing carries both the ache of missing and the joy of remembering, the pain of emptiness and the illumination of gratitude. People begin to see that the smallest things, the smile that brightened a day, the word that comforted a soul, the presence that simply existed without demand, are in fact monumental. They come to understand that to appreciate is not just to notice, but to feel, to remember, and to treasure. Longing awakens a depth of consciousness about life and relationships that often lies dormant until stirred by absence. They start to recognize patterns, to recall details, to feel emotions they may have ignored in the rush of routine. In the silence left by your departure, they confront the truth of their own hearts, the spaces that were filled by your presence, and the ways in which life feels incomplete without it. And as longing grows, as memory sharpens, and as the heart aches for what was once constant, there is a subtle transformation occurring. Gratitude blooms in unexpected ways, appreciation becomes a guiding force, and the awareness of what is truly valuable in life begins to crystallize. People learn through your absence that presence is not merely physical, not merely a formality of shared time, but an energy, a light, a force that shapes the days and hearts of those around you. They come to understand that life's most precious gifts are often intangible, felt in the quiet corners of memory, and experienced fully only when absence makes them visible. There is a remarkable power that emerges when someone is no longer present, a hidden force that rises in those left behind, a resilience that is born not from comfort but from challenge. When you step away, when your presence is withdrawn, the world is forced to continue without the steady anchor of your support, the familiar guidance of your voice, and the quiet reassurance of your existence. In that space, people confront realities they may have avoided, and they discover capacities within themselves they never knew existed. Strength is not revealed in moments of ease or convenience. It is forged in absence, in the gaps left by those who matter, and in the silent test of endurance that follows. When your presence is removed, they are confronted with the truth of their own independence, the need to navigate life without leaning on what was once reliable. Suddenly, tasks that seemed small become challenges. Decisions that seemed easy require courage, and emotions that were once shared must be managed alone. And it is in that management, in the confrontation with the unfamiliar weight of self-reliance, that strength begins to emerge. People begin to realize that they can endure more than they imagined, that their hearts can carry burdens they feared were too heavy, and that their minds can find clarity even when the familiar compass of your presence is gone. There is a quiet empowerment in this process, a transformation that is subtle but profound. Absence does not weaken, it instructs. It teaches that resilience is not granted, it is earned, and it is often earned through the challenge of navigating life without what once provided certainty. In these moments, individuals start to uncover inner resources, courage, patience, determination, and wisdom that had been dormant, waiting for a moment when they would be needed most. They begin to recognize their own capacity for adaptation, the ability to find solutions when guidance is absent, and the power of trusting themselves in the face of uncertainty. Strength emerges not as a loud proclamation, but as a quiet certainty, a steadfast presence within themselves that cannot be shaken by circumstance or loss. The absence of someone they relied on becomes a catalyst, a spark that ignites self-confidence and personal growth. And in the reflection that follows, they see the lessons that absence provides, that vulnerability can coexist with courage, that dependence on others must be balanced with faith in oneself, and that life's challenges are opportunities for discovery rather than reasons for despair. People come to understand that true strength is not measured by the avoidance of difficulty, but by the ability to endure, adapt, and rise in its presence. They learn that resilience is cultivated in the quiet moments of struggle, in the solitary decisions, and in the moments when they feel most alone, because it is in these moments that the human spirit reveals its most extraordinary capability. And as they navigate life without your constant guidance or support, they begin to take ownership of their own growth, to trust their instincts, and to recognize that they are capable of far more than they ever believed. The absence of a guiding hand, a familiar voice, or a comforting presence becomes a proving ground, a laboratory in which character is refined and courage is tested. Strength emerges not from comfort, not from ease, but from the willingness to face life fully, to meet uncertainty with determination, and to recognize that challenges are opportunities rather than obstacles. And as this strength grows, as confidence deepens, and as resilience becomes second nature, there is a quiet awakening to the truth that they are capable of navigating life's storms on their own, drawing from reserves that were always there but required the test of absence to reveal. Memory is a quiet teacher, a guide that speaks and whispers long after the voices around us have faded. When you disappear, when your presence is withdrawn, the memories you leave behind begin to take shape in the minds of those who remain. Each smile you once shared, each word you offered, each act of kindness becomes a lesson, a reminder, a spark that ignites reflection and understanding. Memory has a way of magnifying significance, of taking the ordinary moments that may have seemed fleeting or trivial and revealing them as extraordinary, rich with meaning and purpose. People begin to recall the way you made them feel, the comfort that your presence provided, and the subtle ways in which you influenced their lives. Those memories do not fade simply because you are gone. Rather, they grow sharper, more vivid, more impactful. They replay the laughter, the guidance, the support, and the care you once offered. And in doing so, they reveal the enduring value of presence. Memory teaches through repetition, through reflection, and through the subtle recognition that what is absent cannot be replaced easily. Every interaction you had, no matter how small, is remembered. And those moments accumulate into a quiet but powerful instruction about life, relationships, and human connection. People begin to see patterns in your actions, lessons embedded in your behavior, and wisdom hidden in the ordinary gestures they may have overlooked while you were near. The absence of your presence allows these lessons to crystallize, to become visible in ways that were obscured by the immediacy of everyday life. Memory becomes a lens through which others learn to appreciate the depth of your influence, to understand the weight of your contributions, and to recognize the subtle ways in which life was enriched by your existence. Each recollection carries a piece of insight, a fragment of understanding that shapes choices, informs behavior, and inspires growth. People start to realize that your impact was not limited to the moments you were physically present, but extended beyond, leaving a lasting imprint on the way they think, feel, and act. Memory teaches patience, gratitude, empathy, and awareness, not through lectures or admonitions, but through lived experience that is recalled and examined over time. The absence of your immediate presence amplifies the significance of what remains, turning nostalgia into a teacher, longing into a guide, and remembrance into wisdom. It is in the quiet reflection on these memories that individuals begin to understand the importance of presence, the weight of influence, and the enduring power of the connections we build. They see that life is composed not only of the moments we live, but of the echoes we leave behind, the traces that remain in the minds and hearts of others. Memory reminds them of what mattered, what was cherished, and what should never be overlooked again. It reveals the depth of emotion, the strength of bonds, and the lessons hidden in seemingly simple interaction. People begin to internalize these lessons, carrying them forward into their own lives, applying the wisdom learned from remembering, and allowing those recollections to shape decisions, actions, and priorities. And as they navigate the world, guided by the echoes of what once was, memory becomes more than a record of the past. It becomes a living teacher, shaping perspectives, inspiring growth, and illuminating truths that might otherwise have gone unnoticed. Memory has the power to transform absence into presence, loss into insight, and the past into a guide for living with greater intention, awareness, and appreciation. There is a remarkable and often underestimated force that emerges when someone disappears, when their presence is withdrawn from the rhythm of life around them. It is the power to ignite action, to awaken dormant motivation, and to compel people to move in ways they might never have considered while the familiar presence remained. When you step away, intentionally or otherwise, those who are left behind are confronted with the undeniable reality of absence. And in that confrontation, they feel a stirring within themselves. It is a subtle push, a gentle but persistent reminder that life is fleeting, that time waits for no one, and that the spaces we occupy are precious. Absence has a way of breaking the routine, disrupting complacency, and forcing awareness. People begin to reflect on what has been left undone, what has been taken for granted, and what opportunities have been overlooked. In that reflective pause, the seeds of action are planted, and the energy to move forward begins to rise. The disappearance acts as a catalyst, creating a vacuum that demands attention and effort. It is in this vacuum that people realize the urgency to act, to reach out, to speak words that were left unspoken, to make changes that were postponed, and to embrace the things that truly matter before it is too late. Action becomes necessary because the absence illuminates gaps in connection, in understanding, in care, and in intention. The void left behind is not just emptiness, it is an invitation to fill it with meaningful effort, with deliberate choices, and with purposeful engagement. People feel the need to step forward, to reconnect, to express gratitude, to reconcile, and to contribute in ways they may have overlooked when presence made action optional. The disappearance of someone significant awakens initiative, and often it awakens courage. The absence removes the complacency born from familiarity, the false comfort that allows important actions to be delayed. Suddenly, people are called to prioritize, to act decisively, to embrace responsibility, and to make choices that reflect true value rather than passing convenience. It is a reminder that time is limited, that moments are irreplaceable, and that life's opportunities do not wait for perfect conditions or endless preparation. The realization that someone is no longer there, the one whose presence once provided guidance, inspiration, or support, creates a sense of urgency. It propels individuals to move beyond hesitation, to shed fear of failure or discomfort, and to act in alignment with their truest intention. Disappearance compels focus, attention, and clarity. It inspires people to evaluate what is truly important, to prioritize relationships and experiences, and to take meaningful steps toward goals that may have been neglected. Action ignited by absence is not just reactionary, it is transformational. It shapes behavior, strengthens character, and cultivates a sense of purpose. The stirring created by disappearance teaches that life is not meant to be passively endured, that connections are not to be taken for granted, and that meaningful impact is the result of deliberate effort. It awakens a consciousness that fuels determination, a recognition that influence and legacy are forged through choice, and a motivation to act before another moment slips away unnoticed. In the emptiness left by your departure, people begin to move, to reach, to strive, and to engage with life in ways that would not have arisen in the comfort of constant presence. Absence in this way becomes a teacher of urgency, a motivator of initiative, and a catalyst for transformation, compelling those left behind to live with intention, to act with purpose, and to make the most of every opportunity they have been granted.